There's a moment most of us know. You're at a party or a dinner table or surrounded by people who love you. And yet, somewhere beneath the noise, there it is. A quiet, a distance, a feeling that you are fundamentally, inexplicably alone. And the first thing we usually do with that feeling is try to make it stop. We scroll, we pour another drink, we say yes to plans we don't want to keep. We do almost anything to outrun it. But what if loneliness isn't a malfunction? What if it's a message? Today we're going to look at what science has discovered about what loneliness does to your brain. And then we're going to go a little deeper into what spiritual traditions have known for centuries, that the feeling of disconnection is often the beginning of the most important journey you'll ever take. Let's start with the biology, because it's more profound than most people realize. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo spent decades studying loneliness at the University of Chicago. What he found wasn't just that loneliness felt bad, it was that loneliness physically changes the brain. When you feel socially isolated, your nervous system shifts into what researchers call hypervigilance. Your threat detection centers, particularly the amygdala, become more reactive. You start reading neutral faces as threatening. You interpret ambiguous situations as hostile. Your body begins to treat the social world as a danger zone. And it makes perfect evolutionary sense. For most of human history, being separated from your tribe meant death. So your brain evolved a powerful alarm system: loneliness. Like hunger tells you to eat, loneliness tells you to reconnect, urgently. It was never meant to be a permanent state, it was meant to be a signal. But here's where it gets interesting. In chronically lonely people, researchers have observed something called self-protective misattunement. The brain, trying to protect you from further rejection, actually begins to pull back from others. You become more guarded, more hyper-aware of social threat, more likely to misread kindness as a trap. Loneliness, if we're not careful, teaches itself to stay. And the physical consequences are real. Chronic loneliness has been linked to elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep architecture, weakened immune function, and inflammation, the kind that quietly erodes your cardiovascular and cognitive health over time. Researchers have compared its long-term health effects to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This is not metaphor. This is biology. But here's what the neuroscience alone can't tell us: why the signal exists in the first place, and what it might be pointing toward, beyond just another person to text. Every major spiritual tradition in human history has had something to say about aloneness, and almost none of them said, avoid it. The Desert Fathers withdrew into the wilderness. Mystics of every faith sought the silence. The Buddha sat alone beneath a tree. Jesus went 40 days into the desert. Indigenous vision quests sent young people into solitude as a rite of passage, not as punishment, but as initiation. They weren't running from connection, they were running toward something. The distinction the mystics kept making, across cultures, across centuries, is the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted aloneness. It looks outward, aching for what isn't there. Solitude is the practice of chosen aloneness. It looks inward and finds that something is already there. Thomas Merton wrote that we cannot find ourselves in other people. He didn't mean we don't need each other. He meant that a self discovered only through the eyes of others is a borrowed self, hollow at the center. And Carl Jung, whose work bridged the psychological and the spiritual, believed that much of what we call loneliness is actually the psyche's call for integration, a summons to meet the parts of yourself you've been outsourcing to relationships, to approval, to noise. The loneliness, in other words, might not be telling you that you need more people. It might be telling you that you've been a stranger to yourself. We are, by almost every measurable standard, the most connected generation in human history, and one of the loneliest. A 2023 advisory from the U.S. Surgeon General called loneliness a public health epidemic. Studies show that rates of reported loneliness have roughly doubled over the past few decades, even as our social infrastructure, our ability to contact anyone, anywhere, instantly, has never been greater. Something isn't adding up, and the spiritual traditions would say, of course. Because what we've built is a system of contact without presence, visibility without vulnerability, followers without witnesses. We've learned to perform connection without ever risking it. We share our highlight reels and wonder why we feel unseen. We fill every silence with content and wonder why we feel empty. The brain gets the stimulus, but the soul, whatever you want to call that deeper layer of you that needs to be known, goes hungry. Here's where science and spirit begin to converge. The research on what actually heals loneliness is striking in how simple it is. It's not the number of social interactions, it's the quality. Specifically, feeling understood, feeling that your inner world has landed in someone else and been received with care. Cacioppo's research found that what lonely people needed wasn't more socializing. It was safe, vulnerable, reciprocal connection. The kind where you say the thing you don't usually say, and the other person doesn't flinch. And the contemplative traditions have always said, you cannot offer that to another person until you've practiced offering it to yourself. This is why solitude isn't the opposite of connection. It's the training ground for it. When you sit with your own discomfort, when you stop running from the quiet, you build a capacity for presence that you simply cannot manufacture any other way. You meet your own darkness, and you survive it. And then you can meet someone else's. The ache of loneliness at its truest level is the ache of the self to be met, first by you, and then by others who are real enough to meet you back. So if you're feeling lonely right now, really lonely, not just bored lonely, but that deep ache lonely, here's what I want to offer you. Don't just reach for your phone. Sit with it for 5 minutes first. Not to punish yourself, not to wallow, but to ask it, genuinely. What are you trying to tell me? What part of me is asking to be seen? Your nervous system will resist this. It will call it dangerous. It will say, fix it now. But the mystics and the neuroscientists are, for once, telling you the same thing. The signal is not the enemy. The signal is information. And if you can learn to read it, instead of silence it, it will lead you somewhere, not away from people, but toward a version of connection that is real enough to actually matter. The loneliness in you is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are human, that you are wired for depth, and that somewhere beneath the noise, you already know that. If this felt familiar, stay with me. Subscribe for more.